Have you seen like players physically fighting in the dressing room?
Not so much physically fighting, but I mean,
you were there with Swanee. With Swanee,
I could have chinned Swanee multiple times. I literally could have chinned Swanee multiple times. But in the end, because you know what he's like, and you know that you're eventually going to run out of batteries, you just shake your head. That's just. But you need characters like that in the dressing room. You know, Flintoff was probably the best dressing room person I'd ever seen, because he knew what to say, and the tone to say it in every situation.
Do you think, because you're best friends with Flintoff?
No,
do you think like there are players out there that will be thinking?
No, because
you got protected by
he would have a go. He would have a go at. But I mean, if Swanee did something wrong or KP said something, Fred would be the first person to stand up and call him out on it. He'd also be able to sort of diffuse any sort of tense situations with a quick word or a quick chat on something. I mean, so trivial. I mean, being, you know, just take the sort of heat out of the moment. You know, with a quick quip, you know, one liner, bang, and that's just diffused it. He was very, very good. Michael was very. You talk about leaders. It all comes from leadership. I mean, and the leader. You know, I've been sometimes quite critical of Duncan, but Duncan he didn't say a great deal, but you knew he was in charge, and he was working people from behind. He had his lieutenants like Sir Matthew Maynard, and physio Dean Conway was a strong, powerful character. I mean, obviously Nasser before, and then obviously Michael after. Michael was a brilliant leader. I mean, he was a great psychologist. I always describe Michael Vaughan as the best liar that I've ever met, because he could make you feel 10 foot tall when you weren't feeling 10 foot tall. He had this great ability to take you out of the moment, put you back into it in a focus-driven way, that your next challenge is this, when you were worrying about it 10 minutes ago. But that in between 10 minutes, just talking to him made you feel 10 foot tall. But he did it by making you believe in it. He didn't just do it like cricketers aren't, you know, some people are, but cricketers aren't daft. You know, somebody coming up, you know, I think encouraging you and going, you're bowling well, keep going. You go, no, I'm not. I'm going at 8 and over. Shut up, you idiot. You know, realistically, I'm not. I've nicked the last foot. I mean, I've nicked the last 4 dismissals to slip. You know, I've got a problem. You know. Michael was brilliant at making you get out of the moment and bringing you back into it. And there were a lot of strong characters in there. Ashley Giles, another one. Honesty, that was key to that successful 2005 team. You know, Trez didn't say a great deal. You know, we go through the group. Straussy was not very vocal. Neither was Belly, but Gilo was. You know, if he felt as though, or the group felt as though somebody was just acting above their station, Gilo would pull you up straight away. And that's why it doesn't surprise me that Ashley Giles has done everything in cricket, because he was his character was fantastic, and in an honest way. If you were being he would tell you. You know, pull your finger out.
With cricket, and with professional sport, this is one of the unique things about being a professional sports star. I mean, Jarrod or myself or people who work in an office or whatever, our work can be a bit ambiguous. You can kind of get away with it for a few weeks if you so wish. You know, what is success and failure in my job, for instance? You know, you could sit down and talk about it for quite a while, and at the end of it, you know, you come to a decision whether I'm doing a good job or not. But with a professional sports person, it's quite clear. You know, you just look at the scorecard.
Yeah.
Right? And that really is essentially it. And one of the unique dramas that plays out within cricket teams is the player that's struggling. The batter who hasn't scored a run all series is getting out in pretty much every way imaginable, and you come to the final test match of the summer, and you know that when that batter walks out to the crease, if he or she doesn't score any runs, they're gone. And they're gone forever. What is that like in the dressing room? Do you start to essentially separate from this person, because they're not going to be part of your life if they don't score any runs. You
No,
see
you-
them on the dressing room. Nick Compton's got a book here, around here somewhere, behind one of us, and he talks about it. I remember watching Nick Compton in his final innings against Sri Lanka at Lord's, and he walks out to the crease, all the pressure on the world on him. And I've watched him in training and, you know, on the field, and you're thinking, this guy is living an existence right now with teammates, all this setup, and if he fails, he's gone.
The thing with that is you have to support that person as much as you can from a teammate point of view without going sort of over the top, first and foremost.
Do you talk about it?
No,
Unless-
only that person can talk about it. Only that person can deal with it.
Is it like the
I've
elephant
been
in the
there.
room?
Yeah, I've been there where you feel as though that everybody's looking at you.
Yeah.
You're not doing your job properly and everybody's looking at me. Been there many times. And you have to stick by the people that are in the dressing room. So the last thing you want to be is in your own space, in your own head, because, I mean, it becomes 10 times worse because you are the one that's struggling. And it's this man on your shoulders telling you, you drop. This man on the shoulders telling you, you're going to go out and you're going to perform. And more often than not, you're listening to this bloke because the negative one is always the loudest voice. People deal with it in different ways, I think. I think some people will want to be around people to take their mind off it. Others will go, I'm going to work harder, I'm going to go in the nets. Others will go, do you know what? I've tried that, didn't work. I'm just going to go out and smash it. Last chance. You know, Damien Martin's last test match in Adelaide. And, you know, Paul Collingwood gave him some stick as he's walked past. You know, I'd been dropped down the order. Collie's give him a little, as you all do. You know, you're under pressure, mate. Yeah, I better make a good one. Walks out, he hit the first ball for 6, hit the next ball for 4, slapped the next one to go, he walked off. I think Collie said something to me again. He went, I'm bothered, I'm retired, and I'm loaded. And just walked past him. And it's like, some people deal with it that way, which it was something along them lines. I think, again, I go back to the very, very start. Cricket is a team sport played by individuals, and it's very much individualistic. When you're in that dressing room, everybody's mind works in a different way. That's the brilliant human element of sport. Some people will deal with pressure completely different to others. I bowled the first ball, second slip in Brisbane.
Did you?
I think so, yeah. It got wider since the years have gone by.
With the gully.
Yeah, but for me, during that time, I was like, I needed people around me, and I needed the team around me, and I needed to make sure that I was still trying to, while that was so evident that this is never going to go away, I still needed the same process to go through to get myself in a position to start again in Adelaide, to get myself in a position to be ready if I was selected. But you have the elephant in the room, that big massive hat that everybody seems to be staring at, that's invisible, that's on top of your head, that you as a person feel as though you're not contributing here. That feeling will never ever go away from anybody. There's nobody, no matter where you're playing franchise cricket, third 11 cricket in the park. That's a human feeling. That's a human element, and you'll never ever get away with that. And I think people deal with it in different ways. And I think that's a good thing about a strong dressing room is having characters and having leadership to understand what that situation is, to see what that person needs, understanding what that person might need going forward, and being able to help him, because there's only him, that or her, that individual, they can put it right. Because no matter what Michael Vaughan says to you, no matter what Duncan Fletcher says to you, no matter Troy Cooley says to you, at the end of the day, you're the one that's got to get up in the morning, look at the man in the mirror, and be ready to go and do your job. And whether you're good enough or you're not good enough, the process that you go through, and a little bit of luck comes into it. Because how many times have you seen Jarrod? You go, last chance saloon, last chance saloon. It could go one or two ways, and sometimes it's a little bit of luck. You nick it, goes to slip, drops, he goes on and gets 100, and he was gone if that's catch, that's taken. So there are things that you can control, and there's things you can't.
Just on the change room, the one thing I would say is that when we write and talk about sports, we do forget that the majority of the people in that change room are in their 20s. I remember when I was about 19 or 20, I did a sales job for a little while. And the managers were like 26, 27, and most of the staff were 22, 23, 24. And it was just madness, right? Because there wasn't anyone in that room that had been through enough in their life to have the experience to be in charge. The younger people didn't really respect the 25, 26-year-olds who were in charge. It was just complete madness. And professional athletes don't develop emotionally in the same way that normal human beings have to.
It's because they don't have to.
Yeah, and someone like Harmy's a little bit different. The guys who were sort of later bloomers, but the guys who are like 13 and 14 are already on that train, and they're already being told they're a future England captain. They don't, everyone's telling them the right thing. They don't have to pick their bags up. There's all these little things that happen, and they don't develop the same way. And then suddenly, there's 15 of them. They're in a room together. Someone has to be the manager, and we then look back at it, and that's why you have to give people these tools. It's such a different kind of environment, and we look at a player who's 32 and 33. That professional player who might be the captain of their country, they might be a very smart person, but they probably don't know how to pay their gas bill. Well, they might not know how to do all those other things that you and I and everyone listening to this show who's not a professional athlete has to do. They're not quite as well rounded. It's just a different world, and you do live in a complete bubble, and you deal with it with the tools that you are trained with, right? And those tools come from the previous players that you played with. So if there was, you go back to the history of Yorkshire cricket, right? And you talk to Bats about this, who grew up in it, and he's like, yeah, it was pretty toxic, the things that people said. You can see how they ended up where they ended up, right? At a certain point, because they didn't have the tools. No one ever had. If you had to deal with Boycott, who all the way through, and Close, and these sorts of huge people, right? All the way back to Hutton and everyone else, and Truman and all those guys, all the way through. It breeds a certain thing. We now, though, I think, understand professional sport better than we've ever understood it before. We have to put ourselves in situations to be able to do that. So when Harmy's talking then about how you deal with that, in a way, it's not quite grief counselling, but what he's talking about is like on the verge of grief counselling, right? Of like, this person has spent their entire life trying to get to this moment. Let's say they're, whatever compo was, 30, 31. We all know he's probably going to get dropped. And how you deal with that is not just a normal situation, right? His entire life is about to change from that next ball, right? The moment he's out. We have to put players in a situation where they are trained correctly to be able to handle those sorts of things. These are big moments in people's lives.
I think this McCullum Stokes. I know, you sit here and England haven't won for a series for 18 months, but this McCullum Stokes combination is brilliant. Because the leadership from McCullum is about them. I think it's not as simple as he looks. It's like lying on the balcony with his glasses on, and he looks as though he's half asleep. I think there's the leadership of a group of professional athletes owning their own careers and giving them chance of freedom to feel and not be under huge amounts of pressure. Because you look at some of this team. You look at some of the England cricket team, I would imagine 95% of the country have gone, how's he still playing? How's he still playing? How's he still playing? You can probably count on one hand how many are nailed on bankers that have done brilliantly on Test cricket for England over the last 5 or 6 years. And the rest have been up and down. But because you have got that leadership of, well, we want you to be the best version of you and we'll give you every single chance. I think from a leadership point of view, that's good. We're not getting the end products yet, but I think that will come. And I think Stokes, again, is another one who is very sort of empathetic towards the situations he's been in. So Ben's covered, he's covered a lot. He's been in powerful dressing rooms. He's been in, dressing rooms where we've got sort of younger players in. Himself, emotionally, he's been through a hell of a lot. He's been banned a couple of times. Loss of a parent, had the injuries, had all these emotions. And I think when you go through that as a leader and you can give that off to the group, I think that group's got more chance of success in the long term because of the leadership qualities. Because for me, dressing rooms are a flock of sheep. They're a flock of sheep. There's three that you mentioned before, captain, vice captain, senior player. Whatever they say, Well, Junior's not going to go against them, is he? So he goes with them. You mentioned the Yorkshire stuff. Yorkshire, you're right, 100% right about they were going to get themselves in a position they got into because of, it was just Yorkshiremen all the way through. Coaches were from Yorkshire. So they only knew that way.
They bred that system, haven't they?
That system's aware, and
it won them a lot of games.
It did,
but it broke a lot of guys along the way.
But for every, Jeffrey Boycott, Brian Close, Joe Root, for every one of them, there was 10 that probably didn't make it. So dressing rooms the culture is dangerous. The culture is toxic. But for me, it always comes down to leadership. If you've got a good leader at the top, if you've got 2 or 3 good, strong senior players in the dressing room, the rest sorts itself out. You don't need the manager because the rest sorts itself out. And I'll flip it all the way back to what I said about the 2005 lot. Was Butch, Nasser and Thorpe were in during 2004 and 2003. And they were brilliant in that dressing room that went with it. But that was the ending of the non-central contract brigade. And then that central contract brigade come in, where you had more sort of freedom to feel. You knew you were going to be playing next week. There was less, I wouldn't say there was less pressure on you, because there was a huge amount of pressure on you because you were playing for England. But that reality was you were going to play 7 test matches in the summer because of the way central contracts were given out. So you were given backing, you were given belief, and I think that changed. A lot of dressing rooms, a lot of the England dressing rooms after that. Because before, I always said there were selfish dressing rooms. That's not the part of the individuals, though. That was just a system that was built for me.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.